Well, my my Timex has 10:02, so we'll get started. Dan, could you pray us in before we start?
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this opportunity for us to be here this morning. Pray that we open our Bibles, see the truths that got to be taught to us. Pray, Lord, make application to our lives. Help us to be better people. So thankful, Lord, for blessings, especially for your Son. In the name we pray.
Amen. I know everybody can hear me because I could sure hear me echoing. Last week we discussed Matthew 24, and I feel like that we need to take another look at it because I had this handout I'm giving you with me the whole time, and I had so many things going on that I didn't get it distributed to you, or I didn't talk about it, so I just decided to go back and make copies of it. And I had the idea that after I retired, I was going to be a teacher, so I took a class, and we all did this thing called Thread. What we're going to study today, if we get to it, and I know we're not in any hurry to get through all this, so a lot of times things thread right into the other, and this, what we're fixing to talk about today, threads right into the other. And yes, this is a commentary, and it's a little bit of paraphrasing here. But I think I'm going to go through this briefly, but what we talked about yesterday is when, in 23, before we just talk about 24, Jesus is letting the Pharisees have it. He's telling them how sorry they are. We've already discussed that. So we're going to get into this first paragraph. And it says, after God's judgment on the scribes and the Pharisees in 23:13 in the city of Jerusalem, and it gives another reference there, Jesus leaves the temple, walking towards the Mount of Olives with his disciples. And I'm sure they heard all this, and some of them were thinking, well, what was that all about? And then the next sentence is someone in the group refers to the temple, saying something about the buildings. And Jesus responds with another dire statement about God's coming and judgment on Israel. He says the temple will be destroyed, every brick displaced. History indicates that this prophecy, Scott Hobson's not here today, but he mentioned this last week, will be fulfilled in AD 70. After a siege of the city and the slaughter of its people, and of course the Romans did this, they burnt the temple and then tore it apart brick by brick to reach the precious metals that had melted in the rubble. Okay, after Jesus takes a seat on the Mount of Olives, with the temple in view, the disciples ask him for more details. Their questions focus on the end of the age, meaning the end of times. They also wonder about when Jesus will return, and Christ responds and fills the remainder of this chapter. We're starting here in 24:3. Jesus begins to describe a time when he will be gone from the earth and the disciples will be on their own. Anybody ever felt like this in life? I'm sure you have. They're gone. Now I got it all by myself. And that's what he's telling them. So he gives them a warning that many will come proclaiming to be Christ, the Messiah. They will hear the news and gossip about violence, conflict, and other tragedies. There will be international conflicts, famines, natural disasters. None of these will mean the end of time has arrived. At most, they are signs that the end of the age is approaching. Sounds about right, doesn't it? We're going through all this today. The era will bring great suffering to the followers of Christ. And he's going to get on in here and saying they will be prosecuted, murdered. This hate will be due to the world's rejecting of Christ. Many who seem sincere in following Christ will fall away under this pressure and even betray and hate their former friends. Liars will arise and lead many self-identified Christians away from the faith. Rejection of morality and law will expand. Sounds like today. The influence of godly love will fade from the world. The godly love, that means helping your neighbor, and we're going to get to that. Or we already have really talked about it. Love God first and then love your neighbor second. We did mention that last week. Those who survive these events, however, will see the gospel preached throughout the world. right as the end comes. Matthew 24, 9 through 14. Okay, a vivid sign of end days will fulfill a prophecy mentioned extensively by the prophet Daniel. Let's go to Daniel 8:13. Now, here again, I'm going to reiterate, or say again, reiterate's a fancy word, mention it again. It's hard for me to understand all this, but I'm going to give you time to get there. I'll get there a little faster on my phone. I had to read this 2 or 3 times, and I think I've got a little bit of grasp on it. Then I heard a Holy One speaking. This is a little foreshadowing going on. Another Holy One said, can y'all still hear me? Another Holy One said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices? Kenneth, he's talking about the old law right there? And the transgression, desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot. So this is foreshadowing in Daniel 8:13. Anybody want to make any comment on that? They're asking how long, but nobody knows how long. This abomination of desolation involves some undefined, deprived defilement of the temple. Those who see this happen should run for their lives, not even hesitating to gather any supplies. You ever seen anybody where their house was just engulfed in fire and they couldn't even go back and get anything? Okay, but there's one key word here that those and everyone are different, aren't they? This is the destruction of the temple, but everyone, when he comes back, is going to see it. Those are the two differences I'm trying to get across as best as I can. Those days will be terrible beyond imagining. Jesus describes them as great tribulation, worse than anything else in history. In fact, those events will be so terrible as to threaten the human life. While many terrible things, I'm in the last paragraph of the first page, while many terrible things happen in AD 70, they don't rise to the levels depicted in these descriptions. So there's your two differences. Most likely all that Jesus describes in these passages is set to happen in what at the end of time of this writing, still the future. When Christ's second coming finally occurs, it won't be secret in any way, shape, or form. Those who claim they need to tell others that Christ has returned will be those who claim they need to tell others that Christ has returned will be liars without exception. The second coming will be obvious to everybody in the world, including apparent signs in nature around the world. And otherwise unexplained, the sign of the Son of Man will appear. As Jesus sends angels to gather his chosen ones, the rest of the world will mourn. Any reply on that? You're welcome to comment. I know I'm reading this off. Jesus next says, when the people see these signs, they will know that his return is truly immediately upon the world. Just as the budding leaves on the fig tree, which we talked about in a parable, signal the imminent arrival of summer. Those events will indicate the return of Christ. The generation of Jesus' own time will not be the ones to see Matthew 21:43. Rather, those who observe the catastrophic signs will be the ones to see the end. Matthew 24:35. At the same time, the time of Jesus' coming cannot be known or predicted by any person. The signs will be obvious, but only when they happen. Prior to then, there will be absolutely no truth behind the claims to know the date of Jesus' return. That's why his followers must live in a constant state of readiness. Jesus begins to deliver parables to show how Christians should live out this attitude of preparation. The servant found faithfully doing what the master instructed will be blessed. The one wickedly serving himself will be subject to a gruesome, miserable fate. we're going to talk about verse context, and then I'm going to kind of leave it with you. This is the meat of it. 24, 1 through 14 follows Jesus and the disciples out of the temple, which we talked about before. This comes after the devastating criticism of the scribes and Pharisees in chapter 23. Jesus predicts a moment when the temple will be destroyed without one stone left on another. I've always wondered about that. I guess that's why I wanted to go back and take another look at this. Later, his disciples asked for more information about these future events. Jesus describes a season in which the world will be in turmoil, but that alone will not be proof that the end has come. And his gospel will still be preached. That's not in here, but I'll add that on, and it'll always be preached. None of that will destroy the preaching of the gospel. His disciples will be persecuted, killed, and hated for his name's sake. False prophets will rise, and some of them will fall away from the faith. Any questions? That's kind of a review of last week. I think that's about all we need to talk about that reference that I had. I just wanted everybody to be able, that's yours to keep, of course. We're going to start, Julia asked about the curriculum. We're in 149 now. Jesus gives a parable about the 10 virgins. And so we're going to Matthew 25, 1 through 13. And why am I saying at the first that this threads together? Well, here's a reason. Let me see if I'm on the right one here. Yes. This parable is nothing else but about preparedness. And there's something in this commentary that's really good if I can get to it. Then the kingdom of heaven, I hope everybody's gotten there. It probably took me longer than anybody. Then the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins. And my New King James Bible says, does anybody's, I don't know what, mine says that the title of these verses are the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, not just the 10, he broke them up. Okay. Everybody's heard this. Then the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise, 5 of them were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. But while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. At midnight, I don't know what's happened to that. At midnight, while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. And there was a cry, behold, the bridegroom is coming. Go out to meet him. And then all those virgins around rose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered and saying, no less there should not be enough for us, and you but go rather to those who sell it and buy it for yourselves. And while they went to buy more oil, the bridegroom came to those who were ready, went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. Let's see. Okay. Afterward, the other virgins came, also saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, surely I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour which the Son of Man is coming. Any comment? Y'all let me preach. Doesn't that tie with what we just read about nobody knows? It's all threading together. The commentary, which I thought was very interesting, if I can get to that, I'm going to read a little of that. On the evening of the wedding, the bride and the bridesmaid would wait at the bride's parents' home. The groom would then come in with his entourage to escort the bride and her entourage. with music and dancing to the side of the wedding. Now listen to this. Because the exact timing was unpredictable, given the many preparations of the gifts given them, the bridesmaid needed to stay ready. So, does that remind you of a wedding? Do we know when that bride's coming down we don't know. She busts out the door and here she comes. They all wait on her. It's the same way with the coming of the Lord, ain't it? So, that's kind of where that ties in with the other ones in the commentary. Can you picture in your mind, I don't know how this works. Maybe did they have little stands where they sell oil all the time? So, because they don't have electricity and they have to have light at night. And I'm sure there's some kind of bartering or money making a living interested in how they get the oil and acquire it to sell all the people. Like where they sold food probably. And they ran out and tried to get the oil while this was going on, and they locked the door to the church. And they banged on the door to try to get in. This reminds me of what? Noah and the flood. People banging on that Noah's Ark to try to get in. So, there again, it threads in the same way.
Preparation. That's what we need to do today, preparation.
He's telling us not be scared to preach the truth. That's what bothers my conscience more than anything. I came across the other day when I was studying for this. Is the Church of Christ a cult? And I had the experience 2 years ago when Karen's mother was real sick. And we were trying to move some stuff over to our house. And we knew either she was going to move in with us or she wasn't going to be here anymore. And there was a preacher came by and bought some stuff of what I had. And I said, man, I've heard some of your lessons and they're fabulous. And we started talking about it. And he said, since I've been raised, and he just told me, he said, I've always just seen y'all as a cult. I said, but what makes you, I don't want to argue. We argue too much over this. And he's very adamant. Well, he's got a huge following about maybe 11 miles from here. Really, I see him go by my house every Sunday and Wednesday night. And they've got signs in their yard. We need to love Jesus, and I agree with everything. But I asked him, I said, just what makes you think we're a cult? Well, I've just always heard y'all are a cult. But he couldn't give me an answer why. I said, we don't do anything that's not in here. And so it's...
But one of these days, where it says here that the door was shut, there's going to be a time when you can't return, you're not going to be able to respond because it's going to be too late. When Christ shuts the door, nobody's going to open it. And he shuts the door here, but he also opens the door. He's knocking, and if you'll open the door, he'll come, let you come in. But if he shuts that door, it's too late then. Like it was for these virgins, it was too late for them to get into the wedding. When Christ is coming back, it's going to be too late to knock on that door then, because it's going to be closed.
You're exactly right. I've had conversations with people that were really searching, and they went to Lord's Church, and then they went in the Metroplex. And then they tried to watch it on TV, and they said, well, this is just, I'm trying to really search and look, and there's just too much entertainment. I said, well, duh. I didn't, she goes, she told me, said, I just can't, there's just too much theatrics and entertainment with all this, and I didn't like that either. And that entertainment stuff ain't in here anywhere. Not under the law we're under today. So and I know that you can be a legalist and follow like the Pharisees did and get out there and not be. But then, like you said, there's a part where you got to do what he tells you to do. Like the ark that he built, he didn't build it out of oak. But when they banged on the door, he built it out of what Jesus told him to build it out of. Okay, let's move on to the 10 talents. It's an old story, but boy, there's something that I come across in here, and the 10 talents is on 150, and we're in 25, and we start with verse 14. And I want to find that in my commentary in my Bible here also, because it really drives something home about that. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling in a far country, who called his own servants and delivers his goods to them. And to one he gave 5, to one he gave 2, one he gave 1, to each according to his own ability. Immediately he went on a journey, left. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded them and made another 5 talents. And likewise he who had received had gained 2, no more. But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled his accounts with them. I'm reading from the New King James Version. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered me 5 talents. Look, I've gained 5 more besides them. Then the Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. He also had received 2 talents. Okay, he also who had received 2 talents came, said, Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Then he who had received 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. In other words, I didn't get hurt. I'm bringing it to you back like it was. We all know the story. But his Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and I gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. So you take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. And here's the saying that always comes up. Jay's been talking about it on Wednesday night. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Any discussion with all of that? The thing that sticks, go at anybody.
Having 1 talent is as valuable as having 10.
You can do something.
Sure. It's a gift that you have, and
Everybody has a gift, right?
that's right, you're supposed to use it. It's not the amount of gifts you have, it's the fact that you've been given and what you do.
That's true.
Danny bring it up a good point, because one was given 5 and another 2, which was less. But the Lord was just as pleased with the man who increased the 2 as he was with the man who
There y'all, I didn't even think about that point of it. And that's what really you're exactly right, Jay. And we can't compare ourselves if we don't have that 5 talent. And I'm looking in the mirror right now. Well, why can't I be that good at something like that? Or why can't I do that? That's when you get into negative stuff right there and start having a pity party for yourself. He ain't pleased with you. You got to go out and do what you've been given.
And don't think that your gift is not important. You know, there's a lot of times people have not used their gift because they think it didn't matter. Well, that's silly. It takes everybody. Why is we told over and over in the Bible that it takes the whole church, not just one part, not just a foot, not just a hand. It takes the whole church.
It does. And there's different, just like Some people, they got smarts that I wished I had, figure anything out. And then on the other hand, their social skills might not be the best. And you get into judging people. Well, my gosh, why couldn't they do that? Maybe that's a lot harder for them than it is you. And that's what I have trouble with right there. Well, why couldn't they, and you got to say, hold it. There's a lot of stuff they could be saying that about you. Well, why can't he do that? But the name that y'all haven't, there's one key point here, and I found it in the commentary, I wouldn't have thought about it. What about the guy with the one talent? What did he say? I knew you were a hard man. Any comment on that? And the only reason I know this is because I looked in the commentary and it makes perfect sense. That was his excuse. Well, boy, I was afraid of you. I didn't know if I took a chance to go out here and try to do something, you'd kill me if I failed. He called him lazy. So that's, in anything, and I'm not saying this, one of the best gifts you can have is not being afraid to fail in anything. And I think that's what holds the majority of people back. Well, what are they going to think about me if I do this?
You know, the Lord gives each one of us, like you say, a talent. And he doesn't expect us to use the talent we don't have, but he does expect us to use that talent, just like you said, you're a hard master. He expects us to use the talent that he's given us. And if we don't use it, we're going to be condemned for not using it. And if he gave us a talent, then if we'll use it, it's going to prosper.
Yes.
But if you don't use it, he's going to condemn you for it.
My wife and I heard a preacher one time, my whole lifetime, got up in the pulpit and bragged about having 10 talents. And I don't think that's what God had in mind. Getting up bragging about what you could do.
Did he name one by one?
If he could do that, he would do that.
Yeah.
God is just as happy if somebody's got 10 talents and uses all of them. He's just as happy with that one talent man. But sometimes we look at somebody and say, man, he's really talented, and we kind of grade somebody over here that's got one. But if that one's using the one he's got, he's just as justified in the sight of God as the one
Amen.
using all theirs. But we shouldn't be condemning them either.
Right. I'm exactly right. We shouldn't be. And both of y'all's comments really makes me think about something, Tom, and yours too, Kenneth. But when a man gets up and did what that preacher did, if I'm understanding you right, that's a sure sign of an inferiority complex. When you've got to get up and tell somebody that's a sign that you're not really confident. And if you do something, Jay said this 1,000,000 times, people are going to know what you're doing without you telling them. You ain't got to here I go. I'm from Texas, ain't. Did y'all know ain't in the dictionary now? It's accepted. And I'm going to get off the subject totally. I've got to know. Where's Threesha? Okay. Does anybody in here know? Texted? Is that proper? I'm off the subject totally. I got to know. Because everybody's using it, and I know they use ain't. But anyway, I'm going to get back on it. You're really a couple of things that really drive home with me. I've heard people get up and say, and I guess, yes, it was a preacher. And I'm not going to tell the subject, but rather than saying he didn't know about he gave somebody a totally wrong answer. What's wrong with saying, I'm going to work on this? I don't know, but I'm going to find out how to do it. That means you're pretty smart. And James has said that 100 times. But to get out of the rabbit hole and get back on track here, we all have talents. And if we ignore what the talent is, and maybe it is reaching somebody. Maybe it's being able to go to somebody that and visit at the hospital. That's a talent. That's hard to do. Or maybe it's going to somebody you know it's bad, and it's their death. Boy, I don't want to be around this. I think all of us feel that way. Or going into I think it's a talent to go into a confrontational situation and diffuse it. Or go into a situation that's just horrible. You don't know what you can do, and somebody's just screaming and hollering from their loss. But if you just go there and be there, that's enough. That's all that's expected. Nothing needs to be said. All right, let's go to verse 31, still in Matthew 25. And this is a lot. My Bible says the Son of Man will judge the nations. And I know what this is number 151 on our curriculum, separating the sheep and the goats. There was an old lady that I worked with Walnut Street years ago in a Bible campaign. And all she talked about was there's the sheep and the goats, sheep and the goats. And I knew it was in the Bible, but I didn't know exactly what she was talking about. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All nations will gather before him, and he will separate them one from the other, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from your foundation of the world." Here we go. "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink?" Let me read that right. "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, and thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." Then he will also say to those on the left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food, and I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink, and I was a stranger, and you did not take me in, naked, and you didn't clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will also answer to him, saying, "Lord, did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister to you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Assuredly I say unto you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into everlasting punishment, where the righteous, and these will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Any comment about that? That's a lot. On the everlasting days. We all know what is it, Galatians 10, 9 and 10? Do those to all men, especially the household of faith. Yeah. So, is it talking about spreading the gospel when we have a chance also? And that's all the things that we do. And I tell you what, I've been sitting at many a meeting where I know that disaster relief goes out, and we help those that this church has got that in hand. I applaud all of you, because you've got, and I know he's talking about that. He's also talking about us as an individual, seeing somebody.
When the main message of the New Testament, love.
And when we see ourselves at a better station in life than somebody else, we got to think about that too.
Christianity isn't just coming to a church building, it's a life, it's your entire life.
Exactly.
Tom brings up a good point, because the parable or story or illustration that you just read says nothing about religious observances or any of those things
Nothing.
that please the judge.
Nothing about Hebrews 10:25 about meeting.
Right. And doesn't mean that's not part of it, but again, the point is, benevolence was part, or really the main part of the good.
Benevolence is one of the main parts of the gospel, isn't it?
Well, like Dan said, it's all based on love. If you love God, you're gonna, you could look at all three of these parables. All based on love for God. Well, you're gonna be prepared. Worship is part of that preparation. Learning the word is part of that preparation. And using your abilities and talents, whatever that might be. And benevolence.
You go on vacation, you don't quit being a Christian. You go to work, you don't quit being a Christian.
This
Go
is
to Walmart, you don't quit being a Christian.
That's true. This is very true. We had I bet y'all know who this, you brought it. Karen knows what I'm talking about. And a guy had a heart big as this church. He had a cross on rollers. Did y'all ever see, anybody here ever see him in New Boston? Some people are shaking their heads. I've seen several shaking their heads. He rolled it around on rollers, and one night it was sleeting bad, and he was up there, and he had it, and he was a preaching. Christmas time. I admired that guy. He had a lot of, even though we didn't believe the same, that guy had a lot of guts to do that. He was not worried about what anybody thought about him. And nobody that I know of, not one soul harassed him. But the world was a lot different in 1989 than it is now. But I really think it would be the same. I don't think anything's changed.
You never know when you help somebody in need. They see that you have compassion on them and are willing to help them. You never know when that opportunity might come,
It leaves you an open door in there.
you can give them some spiritual food as well, because they know that you care, and if you can give them that spiritual food at that time, they're more receptive to it maybe.
And I can understand why Jay and James are really, and you, push people to read this Bible every day, because it reminds you. It also reminds you to keep your mouth shut and don't say nothing when you don't need to. Me. I'm not talking to anybody out there. I'm talking to me. So, because that can destroy everything you stand for if you say the wrong thing, which I have. And I told you at the first of this study, please forgive me, every one of you, because I've done it, and I'm not proud of it. We're talking about the plot to kill Jesus now in 26. And that, I don't know if that's a good time to stop. We got one bell. We can keep going a little bit. There's still a lot of this curriculum left. Now it came to pass, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, you know that after 2 days is the Passover, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. Okay. He's getting them ready. I mean, how much more plainer can he be in telling you that? Then the chief, let's see, okay, we got 5 verses to analyze here. Then the chief priests, the scribes and the elders and the people of the assembly at the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and plotted to take Jesus by trickery and kill him. They were already plotting. But they said, not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people. So we're going to stop right there. We're going to put that out for discussion. Why'd they say that? They were getting ready. Have we seen things play out like this before? oh man, we got too many people gathered up here. They might overtake our plan. Isn't that what that's about? So they said they're getting to the point, and I'm going to stop and have our break here. They're getting to the point right here saying, okay, we got to do something with this guy because he is messing us up bad. So they're to that point. So we're going to stop right there, and we will start with 153 next week, or we'll bring in the plot to kill Jesus, and we'll discuss that a little bit before we go into 153 next week. Thank y'all for being very attentive. Dana, keeping you busy? I know that's a stupid question to ask.
We have been busy. How old was Elliot when he passed away?
88.
88.
He lacked about 4 months being 89.
So he lived a good long life.
Oh, he did. He did. I never thought, it just shocked me. I know you got to go, but I told Karen, and this is a bold statement to make, they're just dementia. Thank you. Dementia does not run in our deal.